And welcome to the Science Behind Employee Motivation, 3 strategies all managers need to master. My name is Diana Asbury. I'm the Marketing Director here at the Rapid Learning Institute, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. I'm joined here by our Editorial Director and today's subject matter expert. His name is Michael Boyette, and we're both calling in from our headquarters. We're located just outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Okay, well, thanks, Diana. Thanks for everyone for being here. And I just have to say, I am so motivated to do this. The way you know that is I showed up early for this.
You did.
I'm not going to make any negative comments, and we're going to get it done on time. So that's how you'll see my motivation today. But we are. I am actually motivated by this because, as a manager myself, this is something that we always deal with, right? How do we keep our people just, at that peak of wanting to be there and doing a good job? And there's a lot of evidence out there about or a lot of advice really about how to motivate your team and how to help them be more productive. But there's really not a lot of clear-cut research-based evidence, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely, yeah, that's right. So guys, if you're a manager, a leader who wants to see what science actually says about employee motivation, you want to clear away that clutter, right? And learn how to apply these findings to get real results. What we'd love from you now is to go back to that questions box and just tell us that you're here, you're listening, and you're ready. We've already heard from many of you, Jason, Dave, Missy, Susan, Doreen. Welcome, guys. Welcome, everybody. We're really glad that you're here and that you're listening in. So I want to share something with you. Oh, Tim's in too. Awesome. Allie's here. Great. All right. So welcome, guys.
Everybody's on time.
Everybody's on time.
So I guess that means you're motivated as well.
Absolutely.
Here we go.
I'm so glad that you're here, guys. So I want to share something real quick with you. Here at the Rapid Learning Institute, our goal is to empower leaders just like you guys. It's the reason that we do what we do. So what we do is we create 5 to 7 minute micro learning programs that help busy managers replicate the skills in others that made them successful. There are over 200 micro videos in our library, which can be accessed in one of 2 ways. Either you can subscribe to our Rapid Learning Center, or you can license the content and place it into your own learning management system. So that's what we do. Now today, Michael will be sharing 3 strategies you can use to increase employee motivation. The event today is going to be split into 2 parts. In the first 20 minutes or so, Michael's going to share the first 2 concepts with you. Then, if it's okay with you guys, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take 60 seconds really quick to share a little bit more about the leadership and management training program that we have here. Like I said, it's about a minute, so stick with us, and then we're going to get back to the final concept, and then we're going to follow that with your questions. So guys, at any point during today's presentation, all you need to do is go to the questions box and ask your questions. We're going to get to those about 40 minutes into the presentation. So make sure you send those in, and I'm on the other side of that. So if you have anything that's pressing, I'm happy to answer those for you immediately as well. Now, after this session, we're going to send you an email with a link to a survey. We would really love to hear your feedback. I will tell you, we read each of your comments, and we use your comments to improve our programs, our free programs for you. And if you do take the time to fill out that survey, it maybe takes a minute, we're going to go ahead and send you a free ebook as a thank you. So please send us your feedback. Now, before we get started with the program, I'd just like to take a second here to introduce our subject matter expert. His name is Michael Boyette. You've already heard from him, but I want to tell you a little bit more about him. Like I said, he's the editorial director here at the Rapid Learning Institute. He is also the author of our leadership blog. It has thousands of monthly readers, and he's been a featured contributor for Forbes and Salesforce, as well as many, many other leading publications. He's even written books for Simon & Schuster, as well as other major publishers. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. So today we're talking about employee motivation. So first I'm going to ask you, Mike, when we use the term employee motivation, what is it that we mean?
Yeah, that's a really important question, and we're really going to delve into that today. And we're going to really look at what is motivation and how do you deal with it. But it really starts with defining what it means to be a manager. So let's take a look at that for a minute. So we're all managers, right? We kind of have this instinctive sense of what we do. But if you take that step back and think about what is your job as a manager? Okay, so within an organization, a manager is somebody whose job is to get results through other people. And Diana, you mentioned that before. So the manager's job is to work through other people rather than do it themselves. And that we all know that's a tough assignment. On the other hand, when we talk about motivation, we're talking about something that comes from within each person, right? So what does that mean? That means that as a manager, there is actually very little that you can do to motivate an employee who isn't motivated by themselves, right? So we talk about creating motivation. Well, that's something that really a manager can't do because the motivation is internal. But what you can do as a manager is you can create an environment where your employees' intrinsic motivation, that internal motivation, actually comes out and leads to success. So what are we talking about today? When we talk about employee motivation, it's not about trying to persuade somebody to be more motivated or more productive, or kind of giving them that pep talk, right? Because again, it has to come from inside. So what the research does show is that there are some really powerful ways to tap into the motivation that's already there, or to remove the stumbling blocks that may be keeping somebody from remaining motivated.
Awesome. All right. So thanks for clarifying that definition of employee motivation. What's the first strategy for bringing out that motivation?
Okay, so we're going to jump right into that right now. So the first strategy is something that we call line of sight. And what does a line of sight mean? It means letting your employees see the positive impact that their work has on the people who actually benefit from it. And the difference of showing them this positive impact, studies show, is enormous, right? In fact, most people, it turns out, and we'll go into this in a little more detail in a minute, but most people are more motivated by helping others than they are by anything they get out of the jobs for themselves.
All right, so you're saying that studies have actually proven that employees care more about helping others than about their paycheck.
I'm sort of saying that. I don't want to suggest to anybody before everybody starts rolling their eyes and clicking out of this webinar that paycheck doesn't matter, or that somebody's career doesn't matter, or what they're getting out of the work for themselves doesn't matter. Of course, all that stuff matters, but there's another aspect to that, and those are kind of like that's kind of the table stakes for a job. But if you want to hang on to your people, this is what I just said. If you want to hang on to your people, you do have to get those table stakes out of the way. You have to pay them fairly and competitively. But once you cross that threshold, there's tons of research that shows that money is not usually the thing that gets people showing up every day and ready to give their all.
All right, well, that makes sense. So what does science say about line of sight?
Okay, so to show how this works in action, let's look at two studies, and they have similar findings. And these are great studies because they are really deeply rooted in actual management, right? So the first is from the University of North Carolina. So there were researchers there that wanted to see what they could do in the field of motivation, but at the same time, they wanted to see if they could help the fundraising team at their own university stay more engaged, because that way, they could do their research, but at the same time, they could maybe help the university raise a little more money, right? So they figured the more engaged the fundraisers are, the more money they were going to be able to raise for scholarships.
All right, so what did the researchers at the University of North Carolina do?
Okay, so here's what they did. So they had a fundraising team, and they divided the team into 3 groups. And they told each group, you're going to come to this meeting. So the difference was what happened in this meeting, right? So the first group, they came to the meeting and they were simply asked to complete a survey. So this is the control group, which means they're not getting any new information to change their behavior. The survey was just kind of a pretext to have them come to the meeting, because you want to have like an apples to apples comparison. So that's the control group. The second group, they came to this meeting and they read stories from former employees. So these stories explained how working in the fundraising department helped these people prepare for a successful career. Oh, it helped me really get good at calling people on the phone, and it overcame my fear of rejection and all those sorts of things. So this group was seeing stories that made the case for what a valuable experience it was to work at the fundraising office. In other words, what are you as an employee going to get out of this gig, right? So the third group also got stories to read, but these were not stories from former employees, and they weren't about the benefits to the employee of the job. These stories were from students who had received scholarships, and the students had written about how the scholarships changed their lives and how grateful these students were for the education. Okay, so this is one about like how does your job benefit somebody else, which is what we talked about. So the researchers returned a month later to see how the groups were doing.
All right, so what happened, Michael?
Okay, so the results were really astounding. But first, let's talk about the performance of group two. So these are the people who heard, about how beneficial the job was, and it turns out that actually had no measurable effect on their motivation. They were performing at the same level as group one. So selling people on like, oh, this is a great job for you, you're gonna learn a lot, did not increase their motivation, and it did not increase their performance, right?
That's crazy that didn't have any effect.
Yep.
Well, okay, so tell us how the third group did.
Okay, so that's the bad news, right? So the good news, though, is that third group, the people who heard from the students who actually received the scholarships, okay, look at their performance. Their performance more than doubled. It more than doubled. They raised more than twice as much money as the other two groups. So that's a really profound and measurable impact, right? So here's the numbers. They'd been averaging before $1,300 a week in fund contributions that they raised, and after this intervention, that number shot up to more than $3,000 a week per employee. So what does this tell us? This tells us that when folks are focused on what the job can do for them, this is a great experience, more career opportunities, that doesn't make them any more engaged. But what actually does engage them and motivate them and lead to increased performance was learning about how that job helped other people, helped those students, right?
That's a pretty convincing result. But these people are in a fundraising business, so it kind of makes sense that they might care more about the positive impact of their work. So is there anything that shows this applies across the board?
So great question, and it's a question we asked when we first looked at this research, and we said, okay, so if we're talking about nonprofits and people whose jobs it is to just, to save the world or whatever, you could see how those people are going to come to those jobs, because that's what matters to them, So what? But what about everybody else's job, right? So we kept looking, and we found another really interesting study, and this one looked at janitors. It looked at the custodians at a large hospital, right? And these are employees whose job descriptions only involve cleaning duties. What's your job? You got to go in, you whack the floor, you make the beds, you clean you empty the trash. These are not things that are like going to sort of, you would think of as being sort of intrinsically motivating to somebody. They're doing it for the paycheck, right? But what's interesting is that when they talk to these custodians and they look at the ones who performed at the highest level and the ones who were the most motivated, and the most motivated custodians did not describe their jobs that way at all, as, I just do this stuff for the paycheck. Researchers found that the most motivated custodians actually saw their job very differently. They saw their most important job as helping people. So they'd go out of their way to do things like help the nursing staff or to try and cheer up patients, or, when visitors showed up, they'd give them directions and help them find their way around, right?
Yeah, so they didn't see their job as much as mopping floors, but as doing their part to support the patients and families that they see every single day.
Right. So again, yeah, they're mopping floors, they're emptying trash cans, but they saw their job in a way of helping people, and they could directly see, they had that line of sight to the people they were helping. They were helping nursing staff, they were helping patients, they were helping patients' families. So all of a sudden they had much more motivation to do a really good job. And so that kind of takes it out of the out of the do-gooder world, I guess, and looks at kind of a job where you wouldn't expect to see that impact of line of sight. And Diana, I said we'd look at two studies, but I'm going to throw in a third one here. So this one came out of Harvard Business School about a year or so ago, and it shows that an actual literal line of sight actually makes a huge difference in performance. So this study took place in a restaurant, and it found that when cooks could see their customers, performance improved and customer satisfaction went up 10%. And if the cooks and the customers could see each other, customer satisfaction went up 17%.
All right, so what about people in jobs that just aren't customer facing? I'm thinking of assembly line workers or IT departments, anybody who isn't interacting with customers on a day-to-day basis. What can you do to give them a line of sight to the people that they actually are helping?
Yeah, well, think about that restaurant study again, because traditionally in restaurants the cooks are in the back, they're behind a wall. They never see the people who are eating the food. And there's this trend now toward like this open kitchen where everybody can see each other, and a lot of it comes out of this sort of research because it really does make it. So what happens in those restaurants is they take a traditional job where there is not line of sight, directly, and they make an effort. They re-engineer the job or whatever to actually create that line of sight. So that's what you want to do, right? And one of the most powerful ways that any organization can do this is to arrange face-to-face meetings. So for example, there's a major medical device company that does this regularly, and they've actually run commercials on it, so I can reveal who they are. It's General Electric. So they make medical, big X-ray machines and that sort of thing. And one of the things they do is they set up face-to-face meetings between patients and people on the factory floor to the corporate office. Everybody in the organization, they get to meet with patients. And it turns out this is one of the most popular things the company does with its employees, because think about it. If you're on the factory floor and your job is to turn screws and assemble a device day in and day out, it's sort of easy to miss the larger picture, right? But if you meet with someone whose life was saved because of a device that you helped create, well, that really changes the game, right? So now you can see that what I'm doing is resulting in people's lives being saved. And you think, oh well, that's kind of a reach, but it actually works, right? So in some organizations, maybe face-to-face meetings aren't practical, but it turns out that something as simple as customer testimonials can also have a big impact on engagement. And there was a study, and they found that the impact is even bigger if you post a testimonial and you include a picture, so people can actually see the actual person who gave the testimonial. So whatever you do, you just have to make sure that you're making line of sight kind of part of the workplace culture, and not just this once and done exercise. Again, think back to those restaurants, right? You engineer the job so that this becomes integral to the culture and to the job itself.
When you guys came out with this module, I got really excited, because one of the past companies I worked for, it's a home services company.
Right.
They used to have a customer appreciation day, and they'd bring in customers,
right.
put great stories.
Right.
And a lot of the employees, I thought, okay, this isn't really going to work for them, because they didn't get excited about it, employee
right.
events and all sorts of stuff. But afterwards, all of them came and they were like, oh, this is so exciting, this is awesome.
Right.
They really saw the connection, and I think it really did improve motivation for at least for a certain time. And they do this every year, and sometimes I think they might do it multiple times a year. So in that case, it really works. So this is really cool.
Great. Yeah. Think about like in that organization, like a dispatcher, right? They're not dealing with customers. They're just sending trucks out to mow the lawn or fix the plumbing or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But people say, oh, wow, it was great. You got here really fast. You answered the phone. Like, that becomes a reason to come to work, right?
Absolutely.
It's a simple concept, takes some work to implement, but it's really worth it.
And I think people are willing to share their experience as well. So you definitely reach out to your customer.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got 2 more strategies to get to. What's the next key to employee motivation?
Okay, so line of sight we talked about, that's all about motivating your people by inspiring them, giving them that sense of higher purpose. The next strategy is a little different. It's about your interactions as a manager with your employees. And we call this concept the power of predictability. So predictability is really the foundation of productivity. And to understand why that's so, we're going to back up a minute and talk about brain chemistry. So bear with me a minute. We'll try not to get too technical. But neuroscientists have found that one of the most important functions of the brain, and maybe the most important function from an evolutionary standpoint, is to act as a prediction engine. I mean, think of cave, people living in a cave, right? Primitive people. You need to be able to predict what's going to happen, and that often makes a difference between survival or not. If it's going to rain today, if it's going to snow today, you need to be prepared for that. If you think, where am I going to hunt to find game? If you get those things right, you survive. If you don't get them right, you don't survive. So that becomes a very important evolutionary thing. And what that means is that your brain evolved in a way that is designed to take what it's learned or experienced before and to use that information to predict what will happen in the future. And this is such an essential function that what actually happens is that your brain rewards you for making an accurate prediction, even when what you're predicting is negative. Like when you predict bad things, good things happen inside your brain.
Okay, well, this makes sense. This is why it feels good to know the correct answer to a trivia question. It's why you really want to say, I told you so, to someone who should have taken your advice but didn't, right?
Right. It's like, well, I knew that was going to happen, right? And you say it's a bad outcome. You say, well, why do people feel so like they just have to tell you, well, I knew that was going to happen, because that's their prediction engine, right? And when your prediction engine succeeds, what happens on a neurochemical level is that your brain releases chemicals like dopamine. These are kind of the drugs that make, or the chemicals in your brain that make you feel good. And the flip side of that is trouble starts when you're unable to predict what's coming next. And when people are subjected to this ongoing unpredictability, I thought this was going to happen, something else. I got blindsided, right? You think even the language you hear kind of tells you something about the emotional content of that. That unpredictability is often what leads to conditions like depression or anxiety, or just this feeling of being stuck, right? And the reason for that is because if your prediction engine isn't successfully figuring out what's going to come next, then how do you feel? You feel powerless. And in fact, we can go into this in more detail, maybe on another webinar, but this is what's called learned helplessness, right? I have no control over my life, and part of that is because I can't predict what's going to happen.
All right. So what does predictability have to do with being a manager?
Yeah, I mean, we're not running a therapy session here, right? So what I want to do is relate this to your job as a manager, right? So think about this for a minute. In the workplace, as a manager, you are your team's most important source of information about their job, their workplace, and their company. And the job, the workplace, the company, these are things that are very, very, very high on the list of things that cause people anxiety, depression, fearfulness, whatever. This is important information, and you are the key to providing that information to the people who work for you. So your employees, think of your employees. They're doing their job. Well, their prediction engines inside their brains are running 24/7, and they're taking in your words and behavior to figure out the answers to questions like these. Is my job safe? Am I performing well? Am I doing a good job? Is the company doing okay? Is it healthy? So what's important here, again, isn't necessarily the answers to those questions. I mean, it is important. Am I doing well? Yes, no. But what employees are really looking for is, again, that ability to know what's going to happen, and to know that you are a consistent source of reliable information. So is my job safe? Well, they need to predict that, and so what they're going to look at is, the worst thing is to say, yeah, your job is safe, and then somebody gets laid off in a week, right? So it's because they say, oh, I can't trust my boss to give me good answers anymore.
All right, so let's assume that the answer to that question is your job is not safe and you're not performing well. Is that a good thing?
Yeah, it is a good thing. I mean, it's not a good thing if you're going to lose your job, but it's a good thing if it's true, because again, what you need as an employee is to be able to kind of get the lay of the land. If you say if you're not performing well, then you can take action to change that. If your job is not safe, you can take action to change that. And remember that, for the employee, this is the difference between feeling empowered and feeling powerless. And we talk about empowerment all the time, but think about this. Your employees feel empowered when they can predict what's going to happen. And if a manager is unpredictable, then employees don't actually know for sure, are they doing a good job? Do they need to improve? On Monday, my boss says I'm doing a great job. On Tuesday, he blows his top and tells me I don't know what I'm doing. On Wednesday, he's my friend again, right? So you're kind of whipsawed, right? And that's something that's going to make you feel disempowered. So if people can't rely on their managers to bring consistency, then there's no foundation that they can use to improve or excel. So creating that predictable workplace, a place where the rules are clear, is really fundamental.
All right, I think we are definitely all convinced that we need to be more predictable. The issue becomes, how do we make that happen? So how does a manager make sure that their actions are predictable?
Okay, now we get into the practical part of this discussion again, right? So there's a couple of ways, and they really come down to honesty, common sense, and consistency. We know we should do these things, but sometimes it gets lost in the hubbub, right? So it's important to stay focused on this. So what do you want to do? Well, one of the most important things you can do is to admit what you don't know, right? Because employees that prediction engine can deal with a certain degree of uncertainty. They'll say, well, your brain says, well, the odds of this happening are such and such. It's when things that they thought were certain turn out to be false. That's the real problem. So the worst thing you can do, again, is to make predictions yourself about things that you don't know. If you're not sure, just admit what you don't know. So that's one. Another important factor in predictability is how you communicate good and bad news, right? So bad news obviously is bad, so there's more anxiety around that. So that prediction engine is just craving information. So when there's bad news, what you want to do is you want to over communicate, because your team's already primed for anxiety, and the more information you give, the more you feed that prediction engine, so they know what's going on. And on the flip side of that, you also have to be careful not to oversell good news. I mean, you can communicate about good news, but you have to be careful not to oversell it, right? Because when something good happens, every manager wants to share the positive, right? Oh, we just got this big account, or sales are up. But if you focus on it so much that you neglect the bad news, then you're undermining yourself, because people are like, well, I'm not getting the whole story. So that's one. So again, tell the truth, but be careful not to oversell. So here's another important one. To establish your reliability, you want to keep track of your promises, and you'll always want to follow through on the commitments you make. In fact, studies show that the more you explicitly make and keep promises, the more you earn what psychologists call a fairness premium from the people around you. And the fairness premium is kind of a multiplier on your credibility going forward, right? And again, well, of course, I always keep track of my promises, but I think we've all known situations where it's something that maybe the manager, I'm not naming names, but sometimes a manager will make kind of a promise, a casual promise, and then they'll sort of forget about it. Oh, well, we'll look at your salary again in 6 months, right? If you say, and then you go on and do your next thing, and you thought you're going to remember, but you forgot. Well, the minute you say we're going to look at your salary again in 6 months, somebody's going to go back and they're going to mark on their calendar 6 months to the day. And if you don't bring it up on that day or before, then guess what? You've lost the fairness premium, right? You did not fulfill your promise, right? So if you make a promise, follow through on it. And possibly the most important thing is to play by your own rules, right? And again, this is obvious, but sometimes it's honored more in the breach than in the doing, right? So if you don't hold your team to standards of behavior and performance that you don't meet yourself. And of course, you want to enforce the rules fairly, right? If you said, hey, it's really important that this happen, this report gets in by such and such a date, but there's somebody who always gets away with turning it in 3 days later. Well, guess what? You're messing up the prediction engine because you're not following the rules. And part of it too is just to maintain that consistent temperament through good times and bad. And we have a module on this in the learning program, and I think the advice there is kind of like, it's good. So like, if you're going to be a jerk, if you're a boss and you're going to be a jerk, then to be a consistent jerk, because people can deal with a difficult boss who's consistently difficult. What really makes them crazy is bosses who run hot and cold. So maintain a consistent temperament.
Be a jerk.
Be a consistent jerk.
All right. I think this is good actionable advice. Let's close the loop, and can you tell me what this has to do specifically with employee motivation?
Right. So you can think of the power of predictability. Again, that motivation is there. People come to work. Very few people come to work like just intrinsically demotivated. They want to be there. They're
not saying I want to do a horrible job today.
Right. They worked hard to get there, so they have motivation. So the power of predictability is a way of saying, first, do no harm. Right. Don't do anything to pull the rug out from under that motivation. And so by providing them with predictability, you're simply giving them the space to tap into the motivation that they showed up with.
Cool. All right. So next we're going to uncover the one thing that employees want most out of their jobs. So before we get to that, I said before that we're going to take a quick 60-second break. First, what I want to do is ask all of you joining us to go to that questions box and tell us what you think so far about the information that Michael's been sharing this morning. Type your feedback in the questions box there. And also at this time, if you've got questions for Michael, we've had a few come in for our Q&A after this final concept. Go ahead and start writing those in so that we can make sure we get to those. So far, Michael's discussed two concepts that are covered in our library in the modules named Employee Motivation, the Surprising Power of Line of Sight, and then a second one called The Power of Predictability. These are just two of over 200 micro-training programs available in our library. They're focused on leadership development, employment law compliance, and sales skills training. Each one presents scientific research to back up the ideas. I'm assuming that most of you have heard today about all sorts of scientific research, so you know we love science. The best part is that we make it quick. The modules are just 5 to 7 minutes long. It's a unique approach to training, and we'd love to help you discover if it's a right fit for your team. So we're going to go ahead and throw up a quick poll. We're going to leave this up for 20 seconds, maybe tops. And this is asking you if you'd like to set up a demo with one of our learning solutions experts. There's 2 options there. The second one is for those of you who aren't quite ready for that, but you want some more information. The first one is to set up that demo. So just a quick recap of what they're going to discuss on that call. They'll be able to help you assess your training needs and skill gaps. They'll be able to give you access to some of the modules that we have that fit those skill gaps so that you can really see how it would work for your team. So go ahead and select one of those options. We're going to take this down in about 5 seconds. So far, let's see. I just want to share some of this feedback. Karen says, great. Jason says, very informative. Awesome. Cheryl, let's see. Good common sense reminders. Love that. I think, you know what, anything that's really actionable is so helpful, isn't it? Karen said, I am very grateful to have been invited to the webinar. Oh, it's so great to have you here, Karen. Thanks. Let's see. William, you said that you're having little issues with your computer. Don't worry. We have a second event tomorrow, another live event. We're doing the whole program again live tomorrow. So you can join us live tomorrow, or we'll be sending a recording of one of the 2 events, whichever one we think's best. We'll send that on Friday. So if you want to review this, guys, don't worry, that's coming your way. We have so much more feedback coming in. We also have some, let's see, Rapid Learning Institute customers here. So welcome, customers. Thank you, guys. We're going to take down the poll, and we're going to get straight into the final concept. That went a little over a minute because I wanted to share that feedback. But thank you, guys. We really are so excited that you're here. So the last concept, let's do it, right? What's the third strategy to get your team motivated?
Okay, so here's the third one. We've covered predictability, right? And we've talked about line of sight. So this last strategy is about what people want most out of their jobs. And it's based on something called the progress principle.
All right, so what's the progress principle?
Right, so there's a book out on this that I would encourage you to read in detail because it's completely relevant to the manager's job. So what's the progress principle? So, you know, in the job, you see a lot of perks out there that are sort of designed to provide a fun or an engaging workplace, right?
Absolutely. You mean things like foosball, pool tables, in the break room, free snacks, that kind of thing. So, Michael, do those things actually help?
Well, okay, full disclosure, we do have a very small pool table in our break room. We do not have a foosball table. We do not have free snacks. And,
you gotta work on that.
Yeah, well, do we? I mean,
I don't know.
do we do that because we're cheap, or do we do it because we know something? So I'll leave that up to you. But I will tell you that according to the research, those kind of perks don't make much difference at all.
That's truly a bummer. So, yeah, I would like some free snacks. So what does make a difference?
Okay, so what makes a difference? What makes a difference that makes people really, again, something else that makes them really engage in their jobs? And what makes the most difference is clear signs of progress.
All right, so I'm guessing we have some research to back this up.
We do.
All right, so how did researchers uncover this information?
Okay, so this comes out of Harvard Business School. So a group of researchers at Harvard Business School, they did this huge study. They had 12,000 employees across a bunch of different organizations and industries fill out daily work diaries, right? So they asked these people to keep track of a bunch of things specific things related to their workday, and things like their level of engagement. How do you feel today? Do you feel engaged in your job? Do you not? What's your mood? Did you get a lot done today or not? And again, this is not something they're going to turn into their boss, right? So they're just reporting this back to the researchers. So what the researchers found, they took all this data and they put it together, and they were looking for what was related to what, right? And they found that the #1 indicator of productivity and engagement by far was this: the employees' sense that they were making progress in their day-to-day work. When they asked people, one of the questions they asked is was this a good day for you? Was this a bad day for you? Was it your best day, one of your best days? And the best days turned out they weren't their best days because of external things that we sometimes associate with motivation, like recognitions, rewards, opportunities for advancement, perks, compensation. That did not result in the best day, right? When people said they had their best day, it was most often related to a day when they saw and felt that their efforts were contributing to the achievement of their organization's initiatives, and they were making progress toward a goal.
Okay, so why is that?
Okay, so again, we're gonna do a little psychology here, but bear with us, because the core principle at work here is a concept called self-efficacy. And what is self-efficacy? Maybe a lot of you know this, but self-efficacy is a person's belief that you can make a difference, that if you do things, that things will result from what you do. You can make a difference, that you're individually capable of planning and executing the tasks necessary to achieve a desired goal. And self-efficacy, there's a ton of research on self-efficacy. It affects every aspect of your life, but it's especially prominent in the workplace, where researchers call it the, quote, inner work experience, right? This is how I feel about the work that I do. And what the researchers found is that when employees see progress happening, and crucially, they see how their own efforts are contributing to that progress, then they have a great inner work experience. Their self-efficacy is reinforced. So what does that do? That makes them feel powerful. That makes them understand their own value, and it encourages them to rise to the occasion and do even more.
All right. Well, it seems as though progress usually is either being made or it's not being made. So if progress isn't being made on a project, for example, how do you convince people to start making some progress?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a catch-22, right? If a project is stalled, then how are you going to get it rolling again, because you're not making progress? But think about that situation for a minute, because this is the thing where it kind of intuitively makes sense as a manager. If you know what happens when a project gets stalled. It's like for whatever reason, people really get demoralized about that. I did all this work and nothing happened, right? So how do you get out of that catch-22? Well, for the manager's part, it really comes down to communication, right? And we said at the beginning that motivation starts with the employee. And the research shows that what managers can do is provide catalysts. And what's a catalyst in this situation? It's an action that supports work. So it's things like setting clear goals, giving people autonomy, providing the sufficient resources and time, helping people with the work when they need to do it, openly learning from problems and successes, and allowing a free exchange of ideas. So these are all things that move the ball forward. These are all things that create progress. We have a free exchange of ideas. So if I felt stuck, now there's something else to do. So to take, Diana, your example of a project, what are some of the things you want to do to create that sense of progress? Well, first you want to clearly communicate the purpose of the project. Then you want to individually explain to each member of your team what their role is in achieving the goal. So it's not just a group goal. People need an individual goal that they can work toward. And soon after the new project begins, you want to meet with your team frequently, both individually and as a group, to show how each team member is making progress toward their personal goal and toward the overall objective. And this is important because there's research also that shows that it's important to front load the sense of progress, right? You want to have like things happening at the beginning, that sense of progress at the beginning of the project, because that's going to carry people through. And of course, what you want to do also is celebrate that progress and those small wins along the way. So, all this sounds basic again, but busy managers, sometimes it goes by the wayside. But if you want to keep your people motivated, you need to pay attention to this, because what you're doing is you're showing your employees that there's a difference, that there's a reason they're showing up for work every day. They're needed, and you're showing them that the work they do actually makes a difference.
So kind of like we couldn't do it without you kind of thing, right? Yeah,
that's one way to phrase it. Or, but kind of the subtext of that is that, your contributions are getting us closer to our goal in these specific ways. And you want to lay out the ways that people are moving the ball forward.
Cool. All right. So today we've covered a ton of material. And so what I want to do before we get to the Q&A is review what we've learned. So if you could go through the 3 employee motivation strategies that every manager needs to master now, just briefly recap each of them.
Sure. We went through these pretty quickly today, but let me just review them very just in a sentence or two. So the first concept we talked about was line of sight, right? You want to show your employees that the work they're doing has a positive impact on other people. So you want to show them how other people benefit from the work that they do. The second is the power of predictability. If you want your team to stay motivated, they have to be working from a reliable foundation. They have to know what's going to happen. And that foundation comes in large part from knowing that you, their manager, are predictable. You're a predictable source of information, and you're predictable in your behavior. And the third concept is the one we just talked about, this progress principle. And more than anything else, what makes people feel that they have a good day is when they can see visible signs of progress. So they want to see visible signs of progress, and they want to see that the work they do contributes directly to the success of the organization.
All right, great. So this is some awesome tactical advice. You know, I know it will change how I approach motivating my team, but I have a question for all of you joining us. Go over to that questions box and tell us by writing in either cite, predict, or progress, which one of these you think that you'll be putting into practice immediately, that you really feel a connection to. Again, you can just write in real quick, cite, so that's for line of sight, predict for the power of predictability, or progress for the progress principle. Which one do you really feel is motivating you right now? Let's see. Gloria says all of them, awesome. Lou says progress. Tina says predictability, the power of predictability. Let's see, Michael, cite, awesome. So a bunch of you writing in.
Yeah, that was me.
So, all right, so that's great. And, you know, every manager in every organization has issues that arise, and we also have areas that we need to make some progress in, just like we talked about today. So we know that you guys need a solution that you can trust and you can turn to. So what we want to do is not only can you request a demo, we're going to put that back up on screen so that you can decide whether you want a demo or more information, and we want to let you know that we have over 200 modules, but we definitely have 3 modules that align to these. So if you choose one of these options up on screen, we'll get back to you. And if you need access to those and you want to use them to help train your leadership team, we can certainly provide access for you as well, so that you can really see how the process works with micro-learning. Again, each of these are just 5 to 7 minutes long. They're focused on a single research-based concept. So the option first up on screen is for those of you who are interested in a demo to see how the system works. And the second one is for those of you who feel like you're not really ready for a demo, but you do want some more information from us, go ahead and select that option. We're going to just leave this quick poll up on screen while we get to the Q&A. Once you've selected one of these options, just leave it up on screen. We've heard from others when you click out of the window that you end up leaving the presentation altogether. So just leave that up on screen while we're doing the Q&A if you want to stick around for this. I know we have some great questions coming in. And I want to remind all of you, you know, depending on when you decide to head out through the Q&A, that we are going to send you a survey. We want to hear your feedback. We already got some of it from you now, but feel free to give us some more feedback. We really use that feedback to improve these programs. So good or bad, we want to hear it. Let's go ahead and get to our first question today. Michael, are you ready?
Give me 1 second.
All right.
Okay, now I'm ready.
You're
okay,
ready.
Yeah.
All right. That's okay. Let's see. Cheryl is asking, there's been a change in policy that's causing demotivation. I too disagree with it, but I can't change it. Is there a way to make up for that and improve motivation?
So yeah, this is always a problem. You know, I think that the managers face is, you know, there's some policy. Okay, well, you know, we're doing this, we're doing that. We're changing our health plan, whatever it is that can demotivate people, and it kind of puts you in a bad spot, right? So what can you as a manager do about that? I think this is one where that, you know, that issue of predictability comes to the forefront, right? I mean, you don't have the power to change the policy, obviously, and as a manager, you've got to sort of support that policy. But think about this again, what are people looking for? They're looking for that predictability, right? So the more you can communicate, about those things, both the reasons why, the specifics of what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, again, the worst thing is for people to feel blindsided or betrayed. So this is one where the predictability part of it comes in. And again, we talked about over communicating. So I think that would be my strategy for that.
Okay. The next, we have a couple of questions coming in about recordings. I got one here from Brian. We already signed up with Rapid Learning. Awesome.
Yay.
Did you record this so I can send it to managers? Okay, guys, so here's the deal. We have another live program tomorrow at 2 p.m. our time, Eastern time. So you can join us then, and you can just go to rapidlearninginstitute.com and go to the leadership section and sign up there if you want to come live tomorrow. Otherwise, if you can't make it tomorrow or your other managers can't make it tomorrow, no worries. We're going to send you a recording of this on Friday after both programs are done. So if you missed part of it or you need a refresher, that's fine. You can get that recording from us soon. I want to get to the next question. Somebody else, Ashley, said you mentioned other webinars. So that's this webinar. We also have webinars monthly for both leadership topics and sales topics. So you guys can always check back to our website for that, or you can look around for the emails that we send out. Let's see. Now, this next question comes from Marta. At times, you may know more about the safety of an employee's job than you can share. How does a manager deal with that? Should they be honest about what might be coming? So, if it's a planned layoff or something like that.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And I think as managers, we've all been in that situation, right? Bad things are coming, but for a variety of reasons, you're not free to share that information. So puts you in a difficult spot to a certain extent. But again, think about what your job as a manager is to maintain, that relationship, of trust with your employee. When I've encountered this in the past, maybe after I've watched my own module on predictability, was again, we talked about admit what you don't know. All right, so part of that also is to admit what you can't say. So if people know, and you're working with groups, presumably, hopefully, so you can kind of put it out there. Look, I will share with you as much information as I can. There are things I don't know, but frankly, there are things I can't share with you. There are things that are confidential about the business. I'm not going to tell you how much money Joe makes, or I'm not going to, I'm not going to tell you about, an acquisition that's coming, because if word gets out, then it's going to mess up the acquisition. So there are things as a manager I can't tell you, and just be upfront about that, right? So if you have that up there, so then when a bad thing happens that you knew about but you couldn't say, you haven't lost that trust and credibility, because again, you've fed that prediction engine, and nobody expects that you would be able to do that. But you can be honest about, I think when people see it as dishonesty, if you say, oh no, everything's fine, your job is fine, that's one thing. If somebody comes to you and says directly, is my job okay? That's where it gets a little dicier. But as a general rule, there's things you can share and things you can't share. So if people know that, they're going to factor that into their predictability or prediction engine.
Okay, the next question is coming from Nancy. What's the difference between line of sight and the progress principle? They both seem to create for the employee a relationship between their work and the organization's success.
Yeah, there is a relationship. I think that they both contribute to motivation in powerful ways. But it's two things. It's two separate concepts, and you can and probably should execute both of them to the extent that you can. So line of sight, again, it's all about what impact, what impact is what I do having on someone else, right? So whether it's a customer, it's a user, whether if you're working for a nonprofit, maybe it's world peace or but what specific impact does my work have on other people? So that's a powerful motivator. The progress principle is about, again, showing people visible progress towards a goal, right? So if you have a goal, your organization has a goal, this person has a goal, maybe the goal is to complete a research study, that's due on June 1. Well, what you want to do is you want to have, you want to build in indicators where people can see their progress toward a goal that maybe is too far out to get that immediate feedback from.
Okay, our next question is coming from Eric. What about a long-range planning employee when the progress and results are not realized in short term?
Okay, Eric. Yeah, that's. I think I think that's very similar to the comment that I just made, and this is where progress principle really becomes important. Is something like, well, it's due by the end of the week. Well, okay, you're going to see that progress, right? But some of these long-term goals that organizations have, these big strategic goals, you can be working at them for months and months or even years, right? And
I think he's specifically talking about, say, somebody wants to become an executive or
right.
a higher level manager,
okay, right.
director or something, and that progress, it may be over 5 years,
right.
not over a few months.
Right. So this is where you want to break it down. You want to help your employee, if it's a personal goal, help them break it down too. Okay, so if you want to be promoted, if you want to be a manager or executive in 5 years, okay, what are the things that need to happen in order to position you for that, right? So, maybe you need to take a course, maybe you need to manage a project, maybe you need to do these things. And once you can sort of break that down into shorter term goals, I think that's where you tie your progress. Okay, let's see how you're doing. Let's make a list of all the things that need to happen this year that's going to help you get to that goal. And then let's regularly check your progress toward those goals, right?
Yes, and we actually had Jason respond to Nancy's previous question about the difference between line of sight and progress principle, and I really like what he said. He said that it seems like the line of sight is an external factor, my impact on others, and the progress principle is more internal, about work in progress that I personally make, which I think is a really good way to look at it, how I affect others versus what progress I'm making as a personal goal.
Yeah, that's a great distinction.
Yeah.
I think that sums it up. So.
Great. Let's see. Bruce is saying, when your product is producing a consistent service, like making a good burger, how can you help employees feel like they are progressing? Some are great at making burgers, but the next step would be management or training, and they're not good at that. So how can we help them feel like they're making progress when there feels like there's just not a lot of room for success, for progress there?
Yeah. Okay. So you're making burgers. That would be a little tough. But so here's the question I would ask Bruce. This is Bruce, right?
Yes, Bruce.
Hey, Bruce. Here's the question I would ask Bruce: is like, if people are working for you, do they have goals or do they not have goals, right? And that goal may be, it's not to make more burgers, in the next 30 minutes, but everybody has goals. I mean, if you want to keep your people motivated in their job, they need to have goals, and maybe those goals aren't even directly related to what they do. Maybe somebody wants to go to school, and that's why they're working for you to earn the money to go to school. Okay, well, if you understand that goal, right, and again, it's not necessarily directly related to their job, but that's what's motivating them, is they want to reach this goal. So I think as an engaged manager, you can certainly understand that goal and connect that to what they're doing and help them help them move toward that goal as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And next month we have Roy Rowland, a guest speaker, with us, who's going to be talking about employee loyalty, and he talks about how he worked with a credit union and is in a sales sort of position, right, with the team. And he said, every time they focused on just the goals inside the organization, they weren't meeting their numbers.
Right.
But when he turned the conversation around and talked about their personal goals, one woman wanted to go to Disney World and take her family there. One woman
Right.
wanted to get married and have a beautiful wedding. And it was amazing to see the results from them talking about what they personally wanted from their work,
Right.
not just what they wanted in their career. So it's a combo. You know, people aren't just who they are at work. So I think that's a really good point.
Yeah. Take that step back and understand. Because everybody, if you have people who have no goals who are working for you, then I think your ability to move forward is going to be limited. So, and
Absolutely.
I think most people have goals, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
I'll say everybody has goals. So
I agree.
Understand what they are.
I agree. All right. Let's see, Amy. Let's see. How do you motivate people who are nearing the end of their career and may not be as interested in personal growth in the workplace?
How do you motivate somebody who's near the end of their career? So you know, this is again a huge topic that goes sort of beyond, you know, beyond what we do here. I'm going to go off topic a little bit here because we do have another module that's specific about that, and there's some really interesting research about engagement, and I think it's the title is something about re-energizing long-term employees or keeping long-term employees engaged, and we found some really interesting research about engagement. And you know, because you think, oh yeah, this person's about to retire, they're just putting in their time, they're just, you know, they're on the glide path out. So the research on engagement actually finds something different. I thought this was fascinating. What changes for somebody who's been there for, and engagement is lower among long tenure employees, people who've been there a long time. But what's interesting about the research suggested is that it's not the employee who changes, it's the workplace who changes, because you drift away, you know, when somebody's been with your organization for a long time, or maybe, you know, you drift away, the job tends to drift away from the things that engage them in the first place. You know, so maybe they're doing different things, or maybe they're, you know, because they're more senior, so they're not getting involved in new projects or whatever it is. So take a look at that module, because it's really important to understand that people, you know, at any point in their career, the things that motivate them and engage them really don't change. I mean, maybe if they're like 3 days away from retirement, but you know, somebody who's maybe a few years out, the same things are going to motivate them, right? They still want to get things done. They still want to have a line of sight. They want to know that their work has meaning. All of these things. So they work, and that disengagement often comes again from changes in their job versus changes in their psyche. So check that one out.
And I love Marta's feedback on this one. She says, it seems like a longer-term employee would be motivated by line of sight, helping others, leaving a legacy, finishing strong. I like that answer.
Great.
Awesome. Shall we do one more since we're at the top of the hour, and then we'll need to head out. Let's see. This one's coming from Gloria. What if you do these things and your employee chooses not to exercise the will to succeed?
Okay, so you've done everything you can to motivate somebody, right? You know, you're being predictable. You know, you're giving them line of sight, right? You know, you're doing all these things
to keep them motivated. And again, we said, you know, motivation starts with the employee. So there will be people who, despite all of these efforts, you know, will not rise to the occasion and will not be motivated. So I think there's two things you can do there. First is there may be something you're missing, right? It's time to have an honest conversation. Say, hey, look, you know, we've done this, we've done that. You know, I want you to be motivated. It feels to me like you're just putting in your time. Like, tell me what's going on, because there may be something going on there that again, you know, maybe you promised them a raise and then forgot about it. You know, maybe something, you know, maybe there's something going on that is actually demotivating them. And before you just assume, oh, well, this person has like a character flaw, you know, it's worth asking that question. Like, kind of tell me where you're at. Get that information. So that may reveal, you know, a strategy for getting this person re-energized. If it doesn't, there's going to be some subset of people who, for a variety of reasons, are not going to be motivated to do their best work for you. So then you have, I guess, two choices. Are you okay with the level of work that they're doing?
and you know, for the amount of money you're paying them, and if so, okay, or if you're not, then that person probably needs to be working for somebody else.
And you wrote a blog post called "Commitment versus Compliance." Do your people know the difference?
Yeah, we listed that one out of another webinar that we had.
Yeah, it's a sales training webinar with Chris Lytle.
Right.
It's on the leadership blog on our website. It's the second one, that was the most recent ones that are published on the leadership blog. So you can always check out that. It's called Commitment versus Compliance, and there's a really cool way of thinking about are your employees committed, or are they just compliant, or are they just completely non-compliant?
Yeah, and again, this ties into that predictability, right? Because they may think they're doing fine, they may think they're doing a good job, and they're not getting the information they need that's going to predict the outcome, you know, the unfortunate outcome that is likely to happen. So sometimes when you share that information, you're giving them information that says, hey, you know, if you stay here, if you stay at this level of commitment, then these things are likely to happen. So you're again feeding that prediction engine.
Yeah, and he even recommends
Yeah, that was a great.
And you can just copy and paste it off of the article on the blog, but you can use that and just post it on a bulletin board. You know, what does it mean to you know, are you committed to, where are you? Are you committed to your job? And you don't even have to say anything, and people will sort of think about it a little bit. So I thought that was a really good idea he gave us.
Yeah, it can start some really good conversations.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, thanks for remembering that, Diane.
Yeah, no problem. So that's on the leadership blog if you guys want to check that out. And I want to remind you all that we are going to send you a survey in about the next 15 minutes. Please take a minute and fill out that survey, give us your feedback, and if you do so, we'll send you a free ebook as a thank you. On top of that, we have another webinar tomorrow. The same exact one will be live again at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. You can go to our website to sign up, or just click on one of the emails that you might have received from us to attend the webinar. We will also send a recording for those of you who want to review this again, and we'll leave the poll up for another couple seconds here. So if you want to talk with one of our learning solutions experts, we'll be happy to get you in touch. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for the great questions, everyone.